It might be 2023. It is 2023, but that still means it's Wednesday night. And you know what it means. It's Wrestling Inc. podcast after AEW Dynamite. I am Justin LaBar, coming to you from Pittsburgh, PA, and north of the border, coming to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He is longtime WWE referee, Mr. Jimmy Korderas. Jimmy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my friend. And wow, what a way to start the new year up here in Canada. Rainy.
Yes, rainy, but on for the weather report here, unseasonably warm. 65 was the high today. So
really, you guys got
can't get
high.
Can't get snow with 65, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm cool. You don't have to shovel water.
Yeah,
exactly. The driveway, So I'm cool with the rain, but again, we up here it's weird. It's been fluctuating, so I'm prepared for anything.
Got to be prepared. Issa originally scheduled to be with us. Don't know if she's going to make it. She is battling the weather and allergies herself. But if she does a run-in, of course, we will tag her in and let her join. But for now, it'll be J&J riding with you tonight, whether you're listening or watching live here on Wednesday night, just after Dynamite wrapped up here a few minutes ago, or if you are listening around the world, whenever, wherever, we appreciate it. And we hope you're going to be with us here for an exciting 2023 as, we have – we had this first night of Dynamite here in 2023. We're coming off of Wrestle Kingdom, which happened overnight, or at least here stateside. We got, the 30th anniversary of Monday Night Raw coming up in a few weeks. We have a big AEW in LA next week. Then we have the Rumble. So much going on. And of course, WrestleMania and so on and so forth. So we hope that you enjoy the Wrestling podcast. Hit subscribe so that way you don't miss it no matter what platform you choose to use. And let's talk about what is dominating, Jimmy, the news cycle. Again, just speaking here from those of us in North America, it's been dominating since early Wednesday morning, when the entire world got to watch live as the woman formerly known as Sasha Banks, now going as Mercedes Moné, made her debut appearance at Wrestle Kingdom 17 at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 17. Came out and laid out the champ, and we know that she's going to have she's the CEO. She's dubbing herself. We know that she's going to be in San Jose for NJPW's Battle in the Valley on February 18th. And then she went on in the post-show press conference to talk about this is going to be a world domination tour for her. And that certainly, again, continues to fuel speculation of could she show up next week in AEW Dynamite. Now, we will get specifically to that match, that segment. We did get some advancement into that match. We'll get to that later, but let's just talk about Mercedes Moné. Jimmy, your impression of the entrance, the video package, the music, her look, the physicality she did, the promo she cut. Give it to me.
No, it's all about the Moné, as they say. And you know what? Here she is reinventing her. It seems like she's reinventing herself and doing a hell of a job. And she's done a good job of creating buzz for herself. And that's what it's about. It's getting the people interested in what you're doing and talking about possibly, not only just over in Japan, but also around the world and working for other promotions. We've seen other superstars, cross promotions. We've seen, especially in AEW, where certain champions are multiple champions of several titles. FTR, the perfect example, holding title belts from 3 different promotions, which is, unfathomable these days. But maybe there is some bridges to be crossed, and I like what she's doing. And of course, the rumors about her longtime personal friend Trinity possibly joining her there. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of buzz about it, and that's what it's about: creating a buzz and getting people interested in wanting to tune in. And she's doing a heck of a job of that.
Well, and let me add one more just random piece of wild speculation and rumor, and if we're going to play geographical favors, that match, Battle in the Valley, San Jose, California, Mercedes Moné, one of her real life best friends, who wrestles for another promotion, is from the San Jose, California area. So just put it out there. I think what's exciting, I thought the presentation, the name, you can bank on that. There's a lot of, she's obviously playing on what she can. That the fans know her as. What's exciting is, she had a big, long Twitter thank you list of tweets, which included Triple H. There's a lot of speculation about, nobody quite knows exactly how did things go down. Did she get an early release? Did they have to wait till a contract naturally to end with WWE? So she's thanking them. She's showing up. We now at least know she shows up at Wrestle Kingdom. There's speculation she shows up at AEW, but then again, you have the Rumble coming around, so you start wondering, and then you tie in other things. Carl Anderson, the first time ever, a contracted WWE talent, wrestled at Wrestle Kingdom to drop the title, to do business. So it makes you wonder: are favors being done? Of okay, I give you this person, so you can do this with them. Do I get to have a one-time only shocker, a forbidden door moment, if you will, at the Women's Rumble, to have a Mercedes Moné show up? Or that's what's kind of crazy is there's so much out there right now that leaves for the possibilities. And with the way that she did the thank yous on Twitter, it certainly seems like, hey, that would not be far-fetched for 2023.
No, absolutely not. And what she did on Twitter with all those thank yous is she didn't slam any doors shut. She left a lot of possibilities out there, and it's got people talking. And just like now, we're speculating: is it a possibility she shows up at the Rumble? Because that door has been open. And you mentioned Carl Anderson. I was thinking about him too, and didn't get it out there. Yeah, there's a lot going on right now. Things are seemingly changing a little bit. You mentioned Forbidden Door. There seem to be a little bit of collaboration between promotions, and maybe there could be an exchange of talent for loan purposes or working together. We don't know what the future holds. The business could be changing in that direction, and if it is, hopefully it's for a positive. Let's put it that way.
Right. I mean, I think it's all the way of how obviously it starts with Triple H for the WWE side of things now. It's all the way of how you value it. If you can say, all right, for New Japan Pro Wrestling, they're getting the value of obviously the new female talent, and they're going to they're getting a lot of buzz. They've been trending for 24 hours almost now. They're going to have her for a big match in February, as we mentioned, again, and however the Carl Anderson situation plays out. And then maybe it's, Triple H saying, hey, can I get Royal Rumble trending for a while with the buzz of her, and then people are going to start Googling her, and then they're going to find out, hey, they can see her next here, here in the States in San Jose at New Japan's show. So, if you can get everybody to the proverbial table and all feel like they're all getting a benefit, but still getting to help each other, it goes back. It's a very territorial 70s and 80s kind of mindset of we all have to help each other so we can all thrive.
Yeah, it's like they say, what's old is new again, because, this generation of wrestling fan wasn't familiar with back in the day when WWF had that relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Antonio Inoki coming over and all that sort of stuff. So for a lot of them, this is all new. Yeah. So who knows, maybe going back to that, we shall see, fingers crossed that if they do, they handle it in a professional manner.
Absolutely. So a lot to be excited for here just in the month of January. And it's only January 4th. So a lot to talk about and look ahead to. Let's jump into AEW Dynamite. And again, if you have a super chat, make sure you attach that money with it, and we will read it at the appropriate time. Of course, that guarantees you to be the third man on this podcast when the time comes. Dynamite coming from Seattle, Washington. Let's just talk about Seattle, Washington for a second, Jimmy Korderas. Whether you liked or disliked things you saw, booking decisions, whatever, that set aside for a second, Seattle, Washington brought the energy so much in America with crowds. There's so many East Coast cities that get talked about because of tradition. Midwest, obviously, Chicago dominates that. You don't get a lot of talk in the 2000s about the Pacific Northwest, but Seattle was hot start to finish.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how much a hot crowd like that adds to a show. You don't want them to take over the show, but at the same time, you want them to add to the show. And that's exactly what they did tonight. You look at Monday night, for example, on Raw, which I thought was a very good, it was a good presentation, but the crowd seemed a little bit quiet. And it didn't feel like it was a big time presentation because the crowd was not that they weren't paying attention. They just weren't as, vocal as you saw tonight's crowd. Tonight's crowd helped make an okay show feel like it was more important.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's not a city that necessarily that I feel like is as heavy on the loops for WWE's travel, for AEW's travel. So they certainly said, "Hey, we're going to make the most of you guys coming to our city here." Just had to give a shout out to Seattle.
Yeah,
they kick it off hot, saying some some Chris Jericho.
Mhm.
As JAS Jericho coming out for his match against Ricky Starks. Again, both men, a lot of reaction, loud Ricky Stark chants. Jericho not having to do much to keep the heat going to start out, just some cheap eye pokes and things like that. Ultimately, we are going to see Ricky Starks gets the win with the spear. So, Jimmy, Jericho now a couple of losses here in a short time frame to young up-and-coming stars.
That I do not have an issue with. My issue with this match, which I thought was a good match up until a certain point, the ref distraction, which I didn't mind in this match, leading to the bat shot to Ricky Stark's head, which I thought was the, traditional the heels distract the referee and get the win in cheating fashion. So my issue is now even hitting someone in the head with a baseball bat does not put them out. Come on, man. It's a little bit much. I could understand a poke maybe to the throat or something like that, but this was a shot to the head, and it looked like it knocked him out, and they did the 3 hand raises this time as opposed to the 1. Make up my mind, please. That was the only issue I had with this. I don't have a problem with Jericho, elevating younger talent, but it's that bat thing really bothered me, because I get it, and I'm going on a rant here. If nobody knows,
you're the ref. Go ahead.
Yeah, I get. Lately we've been seeing people kicking out of everybody's finish and kicking out of big twisting, burning 450 hammer Phoenix splashes and all these crazy moves that people are kicking out. Now, not even a baseball bat to the head is going to keep someone down, and we get a roll up finish kind of thing. I don't know. Anyways, not in this match a roll up finish, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned the bat. So Starks gets the win immediately. More of JAS comes out. Danny Garcia, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara. The girls are out there, and so the numbers game. And then here comes Action Andretti. I say, it's funny you mentioned about the bat. This time, Action Andretti comes loaded with a chair. Now, we laughed a few weeks ago when he came out to make the save, and he came out just his fists of fury and managed to lay everybody out. So at least he brought a chair this time. At least he brought a knife to the gunfight. But even still, the numbers game still too much. He does have the burnt eye selling the fireball, and ultimately, Jake Hager would put Starks through a table from the apron. So JAS, Jericho's been in the stable since AEW's inception. His stables have always been kind of opposition to trying to establish some new guys in some respects, and that trend is continuing here with Ricky Starks and Action Andretti.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows, maybe a seed's being planted here where the Jericho Appreciation Society will not be appreciating Jericho so much if he continues to have these L's against up and coming talent and saying, hey, why are we following this guy? He can't even beat Action Andretti or Ricky Stark. So who knows, maybe that seed is being planted. And can you imagine, especially with the crowd being hot behind Jericho in his entrances now with his music, if he were to turn babyface, it would be insane, the pop he would get.
Absolutely. And I think commentary said it, and I think I saw some people here in the chat saying, Jericho 2 losses in a row. I mean, yeah, he lost to Action Andretti. He's lost to Ricky Starks. Wouldn't actually be 3 in a row, because didn't he lose to Claudio when he dropped the ROH title? So
well,
if you want to count that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know it's technically separate promotions in theory, but if we
but three in a row for him. Let's put it that way.
3 in a row for him.
Yes.
But in Ricky Starks, again, very over with the crowd. So Ricky Starks really seems like he's a stock to maybe buy in on for 2023.
Right.
We get a Hangman Adam Page in-ring segment. He's not cleared, but soon. And when he is going to knock Jon Moxley's dick in the dirt. That precedes them fighting words. That precedes to cue Jon Moxley's entrance from the crowd. Little audio troubles to boot, but finally, once he gets that set aside, he said nobody's took more crap and ate it like he has. Hangman's had 2 months since he was knocked out that lariat. Mox says, what makes you think next time's not going to be any different, except this time you won't get up. So Jon Moxley, Hangman Adam Page did not touch. There's a lot of tension. Did this resonate with you? Did the tension come across the screen to you?
I did feel the tension, but my only issue here is, and again, I don't want to sound like the old school guy going blah, 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 but at the same time, who in this rivalry / feud is the babyface and who is the heel? Who do I want to see win? Yes, I am cheering for Adam Hangman Page to overcome his medical issues and be able to get back in the ring and get back to, the star that he was prior to his injury. And at the same time, Moxley is hugely over as a babyface as well. So, as a fan, who do I want to win this match? I don't know. As much as I want to see this match because I know they're going to put on a heck of a performance. At the same time, but like I use that wheel reference, it's always round. You still need someone the fans want to see lose and someone that they want to see win. And it's not clear. And sorry to cut you off, but to me, it's not clear in this one who that is.
Well, it's not clear in this one, but that's been a that's been reoccurring, I think, with a lot of Moxley's top feuds. I mean, I think a lot of Moxley, going back even to CM Punk. I mean, it wasn't like Punk was being booked as a heel. I think that's been something with Moxley is it does kind of leave you. The crowd still cheers from him. There's nothing about the booking or anything that is trying to sway you away from Moxley. Really, he's still by all accounts operating as a good guy, just a good guy with an edge. But you're right, Hangman Adam Page certainly definitely doesn't come off as a heel at all. He's the sympathetic one, obviously coming off of injury. So, I don't mind babies versus babies every now and again, but I do agree. I think that there needs to be some kind of it is a very blurred situation. So, it'll be really interesting to see once the match happens, who works as the heel, who works as the babyface, or do they both try to, that'll be something to watch for.
Right.
But certainly these two guys basically coming down to one microphone, having to slyly hand it off or rip it off of each other, which is not always the easiest thing when you're trying to restrain yourself from physicality to hand mics to each other. But obviously that's out of their control. I thought they made the most of this. I did like the tension. I thought commentary put some nice narration to it all, but I do agree. There is if you're a more casual fan, you are probably trying to figure out who am I supposed to be siding here with?
Right.
The next one here, there was no doubt about who the fans were going to side with and who were not going to side with. As we have Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett versus the Acclaimed. Of course, the Acclaimed AEW Tag Team Champions titles are on the line here. Just for anybody who needs caught up and here, this has been going on now for a few weeks. This rivalry. Max Caster and the Acclaim put out a music video and a rap a few weeks ago, really taking some shots at Jeff Jarrett, making reference to you stole Kurt Angle's wife, making reference to being carny and stealing people's money. And on social media, work or not, who knows, Jeff Jarrett has not spoke kindly to the words. Karen Jarrett got, again, spoke up and did not like what was said. So really kind of getting people to believe, whether that's real or not, or shades of blurred gray. The energy was here. Max Caster did not let up tonight as he comes out talking about Karen needs to say less and comparing her to Skip Bayless, who's been under fire on social media this week. Total nonstop action is total nonstop Acclaim. TNA, a lot of references here, Jimmy. Just before we even get into the match, this is. Who knows if it's real or not, but who cares? I was hook, line, and sinker in watching this very closely.
Yeah, and that's because we are in on the what they're rapping about. That hardcore AEW fan base also gets all the references, so that's why it is resonating and working so well. And that's what these guys are like hugely over. It's tremendous. He's hitting all the right notes with this audience. Again. I hate to bring it back to the casual fans, but will people who are just tuning in, will it resonate with them? You never know, but they may enjoy it. But for me personally, listening to them, I just sit here in my office watching it and pop every time.
Yeah, and there was and again, what isn't what is, maybe it's obviously it starts out as something and then everybody takes it past the line just a little bit, and this all in the interest of entertainment and trying to get this reaction. It looked like Jarrett took a little detour and gave a slap to Max at one point when he was on the apron. Max looked a little stunned at that. Then later there was Max Caster doing an angle slam, a little mocking to Jeff Jarrett. At one point Max again looked like he's doing a knife edge chop again, could be an accident. These things happen. Catches Jarrett on the face. The next time Jarrett took a smack to Max, it looked a little bit like a receipt. There is some.
That's the word. That is the word. The receipt.
Nobody got too upset because they knew that they were going to get theirs back here in a second.
Exactly.
At one point, Billy Gunn's in the ring with them. They do the old Fargo strut to scissor me together.
Yeah.
Finally, though, Jay Lethal and company do start provoking at Billy Gunn. Billy tries to get in the ring, get some retribution. The ref only sees that. He throws Billy Gunn out. So Billy Gunn's out. But then as we get down towards the finish here, the referee throws out Satnam Singh. Now, Singh, obviously being the size that he is, it takes all of the referees from the locker room to empty out, all of them out there to try to get the big man away. While that's happening, we are going to see Jeff Jarrett hit the stroke. Jay Lethal then slides in because he's a legal man, pins Anthony Bowens. Bowens gets his foot on the rope, but Sanjay Dutt pushes the foot off the rope. Ref doesn't see it. 1, 2, 3. Seattle crowd is cannot believe it. They're insane with anger that Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal have just acquired AEW belts. But hang on, all those referees out there, Jimmy. Aubrey saw what happened. She explains what happened. Match gets restarted, and then real quickly, a little reversal on a roll-up, and the Acclaim wins and retains their title. So as a referee, I got, of course, let you dive into this because the referees were key to this finish.
Yeah, I at least they had it where the referees rushed out and were outside ringside to stooge it off, so Aubrey can stooge it off. If it was a situation where someone ran out from the back, one of the referees ran out from the back to stooge it off, why doesn't it happen in any other match? You know what I mean?
Every match, right?
Exactly. So at least they got away with it, with the fact that Aubrey was out there when they were trying to get Sanjay and Singh back and all that sort of stuff, and it kind of worked in that regard. At the same time, here we go again with the dreaded roll-up finish. It's starting to bother me that we see the roll-up being the more common pin happening. This is across the board, not just AEW. This is across the board in wrestling. It almost feels like the roll-up is the most dreaded move in professional wrestling right now.
Well, I do want to, because I know some people check this podcast out before maybe seeing Dynamite or use us as a reference or what to check out. So I do want to make sure I include this detail that I didn't a second ago. Once the match gets restarted, it looks like Jay Lethal is going to then get in position. It looks like he's going to do a pin on Bowens, but Lethal kicks his feet up on the middle rope to have that leverage. Again, going to try to use the ropes without the ref seeing. Caster from the outside pushes Lethal's feet off the ropes.
Yes.
Pushing that momentum, which allows Bowens to do that reverse roll-up. So while your logic is certainly there of the roll-up is very common these days on Dynamite, at least it kind of fit on the play off of the ropes and that angle. So I felt that's worth mentioning.
No, I do get that, but at the same time, it just again, it just feels like it's happening far too often.
Yeah,
for me, anyways. Yeah.
And so we're gonna have another match with these guys. I don't remember if it's this Friday on Rampage or if it's Saturday's Battle of the Belts. But they announced kind of like a no holds barred match that's gonna happen this weekend, which that's fine. I almost wonder. I know Max Caster's in a tag team and he's part of the tag team champions, but part of me wonders if, depending on when the numbers come out for the show, this match was put in a spot on the show which is not always the most favorable spot. It's the second, I guess the Moxley thing was technically the second, but being put in this position is not always the strongest position in a 2-hour show. Right. If the viewership does well, and if the social media trends continue, et cetera, all those measurements, if people do continue to buy into this Max Caster raps and Jeff Jarrett's reaction, and of course people were just, again, it looked like they were going to riot that carny Jeff Jarrett came in and has got himself a title already. I wonder if there's worth consideration just to let this stretch out a little bit and do a Max Caster Jeff Jarrett singles match or something just to continue off of what's hot and what's trending.
Yeah, why not? Because it like you said, it's blurring that line between, is it a work? Is it real? It's a little bit of both, maybe, along the lines. So it should lead to that. And as far as them having their rematch, maybe a better situation would be to have it next week on Dynamite, where you got your biggest audience, not a shot at Rampage or Battle of the Belts, but that is your biggest audience. And these guys are your most overact, arguably right now. So why not keep them hot on the hottest show?
Yeah. Well, I agree with that logic. Next week's show is starting to pack up pretty pretty full. It of course is at the Forum, the Kia Forum in LA. A lot being a lot riding on the show, it would seem. Obviously, LA, huge market, big show. AEW's been promoting a lot of angles being promoted around it. There's word is Warner Brothers Discovery execs will be there, so this certainly is going to be the principal will be in town. The AEW is going to want to be on their best behavior and best performance of product. And one of the big angles is what we're talking about next here. We get a sit-down interview, Tony Schiavone with Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker talking about the upcoming tag match next week against Saraya and her mystery partner. And Britt talking about how, Saraya doesn't get what AEW is, talks about how her and Jamie Hayter, they're homegrown. This is their house. So, is kind of dismissing Saraya. And I guess we'll go ahead and jump ahead right now to Renee's sit down that she does later with Saraya, with Tony Storm, with Hikaru Shida. And the takeaway here is, asking Saraya, who's your partner? Do you have any announcement to make? Saraya touts the audience, touts the roster, touts the women's matches, and proceeds to put over the lady sitting next to her, but says that she's going to go with Tony Storm as her partner. Right. Hikaru Shida looked very visibly upset and offended.
Yes.
Jimmy Korderas, are you buying in that when the bell rings, Tony Storm is going to be Saraya's partner?
I have a feeling that prior to that match taking place, that maybe the offended party, Shida, will be taking out Tony Storm before the match and offering her services, or either that, or saying, if you don't, I'm not joining you in this tag team match because you had the opportunity to choose me from the beginning and you didn't. You went with Tony Storm. I won't be your partner. And who knows? Maybe the person we talked about at the beginning of this show shows up and says, hey, you need a partner for this match? I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yeah, New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW have had an open working relationship. So it does seem quite likely that Mercedes Moné gets the world a buzzing at Wrestle Kingdom, and then a week later it can show up in LA again. As I just said, AEW needs a big performance, wants to make a big impression. I thought the same. Why have Shida, who's been the babyface of all babyfaces? I mean, there's not been a heel bone in her presentation body. What's the point of making that point of having her look offended? So I agree. I think that's got to play into things here.
And maybe they need to thank us because we gave them that beautiful idea for merchandise. It's all about the Moné. That's a T-shirt. Yeah, that's a T-shirt waiting to be made.
All about the Moné. Dark Money Zone sent in a super chat earlier, saying Saraya Light. I'm not quite sure. So I say save Mercedes for Cargill's first loss, though. So I got that part of the super chat saying save Mercedes Moné to be the one that beats Jade Cargill. Well, look, if Mercedes Moné is in fact AEW bound and she's going to be a regular, she is all elite and is going to have some kind of regularity with AEW and or New Japan Pro Wrestling. That certainly makes the women's division very interesting, and that certainly makes things like when does Jade Cargill lose and who is it to become a very interesting conversation. But it'll make this time next Wednesday interesting to tune into this podcast, and we'll be reacting to whomever it might be.
Exactly.
A lot of hometown connections to this Seattle, Washington crowd tonight. But maybe at least up to this point, the biggest we'll get up to this point in the show, Bryan Danielson from Aberdeen, Washington. He's going up against Tony Nese. The crowd is just going crazy for Bryan Danielson. Huge chance for him. Tony Nese does a nice job trying to get some heat and trying to take advantage of things, trying to show off his freak athleticism. But in the end, pretty academic. It's going to be Bryan getting the win with an old Regal stretch submission, by the way.
Yeah.
Bryan Danielson, big state homecoming, Jimmy. I mean, this was maybe the loudest I've heard an AEW crowd for Bryan since his debut.
Absolutely. They were hot then, and they had a good match and they told a good story. And are you surprised it's Bryan Danielson and Tony Nese? I kind of expected them to have this match, but it was what happened after the match, which got this crowd really ignited. And you talked about the crowd earlier, again, with this segment that we got after the match, I think the crowd really, really appreciated what they got.
Yeah. No,
I'll let you
Yeah, and the big story is the post. Bryan gets on the mic. He says it's good to be home, but he wants another fight, and he calls out MJF. And MJF answers. MJF, of course, notorious for coming up with nicknames for his opponent of the time, and this one is Brain Damage Bryan. That's the nickname. MJF says that he is the special attraction. He gets paid no matter what. He doesn't need to wrestle nonstop like Bryan does. He says just because Bryan looks like a goat doesn't make him the greatest of all time. MJF also says he doesn't need praise from marks and people in their basements like Bryan does. MJF gets the praise of being the top guy from people who have worked in the business and stepped in the ring. He says people put him over. People like Disco Inferno, people like Eric Bischoff, people like Jim Cornette, all very popular names to the AEW crowd, and Tony Khan. He talks about how if Bryan wants to have a world title match, that Bryan needs to do what MJF doesn't need to do. He needs to have a match every week on Dynamite up until February 8th. And MJF notes that he's done this before to his opponents, but he's got to do that in order to have a pay-per-view match on March 5th. Bryan says he'll do it, but if he accomplishes that, he gets to pick the stipulation for their March 5th match at at Revolution. And Bryan says if they have a world title match on March 5th, Jimmy, the stipulation will be a 1-hour Iron Man match. So Bryan Danielson can prove that MJF can't wrestle. He's not just a special attraction. He's a guy who can't wrestle. He can't go 1 hour in the ring. Bryan will expose him.
That and I was fine. But Bryan Danielson did a hell of a job in the promo department here. Obviously, MJF. We know how good he is on the stick, but Bryan Danielson did a great job on the stick. I love the fact that they're drawing this out and they're making it a long-term story, getting to that match at the pay-per-view. But at the same time, giving away the stipulation to this match this early is kind of like what they did with the best of 7 trios thing, where they said, well, if we go to a 7th match, the 7th match is going to be the TLC match. Basically, you're giving away the stipulation to her. You know what? Why not Bryan Danielson says, if I get through all these opponents that you're putting in front of me, when I win and I get that title match, I get to pick the stipulation. And then that's when MJF can say, hey, if you get through them, you pick the match.
I agree. And it's funny you mentioned the best of 7 thing that we've talked about, obviously, for the past, over a month. I agree. It's kind of like, okay, you're having Bryan do this. It's high probability in the wrestling world he's going to accomplish it, right? Unless he gets injured or something wacky happens. So it kind of gives you like at least a save the date. Oh, if he wins through February, then we get to tune into that one to find out what the stipulation's finally going to be. If you're already planting the seed that if Bryan does this, then on March 5th he gets the world title shot. You're already accomplishing what you want to accomplish, which is getting people thinking about saving up to spend their money to watch that or to attend it live if they want to. I don't think you need to put this. I don't think the stipulation is going to, make that much more of a difference this far out. I think you could just say it's going to be Bryan and MJF more than likely. Tune in February to find out what kind of match. So I do agree with that. That said, I understand again the logic of setting it up of putting out a storyline reason of why Bryan has a match every week on Dynamite. He's Bryan Danielson. Again, you put him out on your biggest show. I will just draw the criticism, and they did at least acknowledge it. MJF did. I will just bring out the criticism of the lack of originality of like, this is what MJF does for Jericho. He did it for Wardlow. And maybe they're just going to own it, and that's going to become the thing, is that MJF is going to be known for the sleazy bastard that makes his opponents wrestle 10 times before he does one. Maybe so. But that was the only thing I kind of sat here going is like, we have nothing different.
Yeah, here we go again kind of thing. Yeah. No, I understand that completely. I get it. But again, I do like the fact that in MJF's case, he's kind of, we're not seeing him in the ring every week. I like that fact. And it's, and, he's not being overexposed in that regard. Let's put it that way. And he's being a total prick about it. And, he's getting heat for it.
No, I agree with that. I think the way AEW's using him is fine. I mean, make him appear most weeks because you need to have him appear because he is a draw. So have him appear even just a few minutes on the mic,
right,
is a great use of him. But yeah, make seeing him wrestle and potentially get his ass kicked and lose that title, make that a special attraction. And quite frankly, obviously he and Tony Khan have agreed on that from a booking standpoint, and maybe whatever they have in writing for how many matches he's obligated to do. And I think that's a smart play because MJF always keeps leaning into this bidding war of 2024. And if in fact that is going to be a reality, one of the things that Tony Khan will have, and he still has in the wrestling world as leverage over any other talent, is right now with how AEW does things, you can work a lighter schedule. You're not traveling and doing as much right now. AEW could always expand, but as it stands now, so it's like if MJF does come to where he starts to decide, am I staying here or do I go to New York? WWE has a more traditionally demanding schedule. You have to work to get to that Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Roman Reigns status where you can have a select in-ring schedule. So I think we're really deep diving here. I think that's I don't for Tony Khan's purposes, for MJF's purposes, I think the way they're handling this, absolutely, I get it. I think it's a good move.
No, I agree. I don't disagree with that. And like you said, when you talk about, I don't know if they'll ever get back to the days where 21 days on the road a month, and some of the off days of those those other days were actual travel days, as because people say, "Oh, you're on the road 21 days a month." Yeah, but a couple of those days you had to head out and head back.
Right.
But anyways, so yeah, you got to take the schedule into consideration when you're thinking of signing a new contract. Getting the most value for your work. Let's put it that way.
To that point, Jimmy, real quick before we resume with the Dynamite program, let me ask you this, because you being a ref that was in there for all those days, for all those years, I think it's Arn Anderson. I've heard Arn Anderson say this, that he believes in ring rust. He believes, back in Arn Anderson's prime, they were working 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, right? They were working 28 days some months. And he believes that the body builds up a callus and the motions and everything that when you that when the guys and girls, even by today's WWE standards, where they work 3 matches a week, he believes that increases injury probability. Do you believe in that? Do you think there's some truth to that? That even if you're banged up and you're popping some pain pills and doing whatever you ever have to do to make the next town, on the heavier 80s type schedule, do you think there's something to that of not letting your body get too rusty?
I think there's something to it, but at the same time, it's not completely one or the other, because you know what? The more you work, the more you bump your body does get calloused, and it's all the repetitive motion. You know what I mean? And you start to get a little bit more numb to all the flat backs and all that sort of stuff. It's these crazy bumps that they're taking now that I think is really scary and really dangerous. And that's not something you can do every day. Because you're really towing the line when you do these crazy bumps. And we saw a couple of them tonight that made me really cringe and say, hey, you can't do that on a nightly basis. Yes, I get it's TV and you're doing it once a week and you may have a week to recover, but at the same time, you don't want to put your body at that kind of risk. This business is risky enough without, increasing the injury factor, the danger.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's funny, because that's kind of what I always took into account with Arn's comments, is like, no disrespect to Arn and his generation. They were working, and props to them that they did not have to do as much to get some reactions, but the style they worked was not as risque as more matches of the style today, in terms of what it takes to get the crowd to react. Part of that's just to blame on the evolution of the business, because as you always comment, the crowd wants the burning 450 hammer and all this stuff, and when you go through 3 tables, now you need to go through 4 tables. After you go through 4, it needs to be 4 on fire, so the demand to the crowd is greater.
Right. And to Arn's point, like you said, no disrespect, back then it was a more physical style in the interaction between the opponents. It was a little more snug, let's put it that way.
All right, back into Dynamite here. Another guy with home state connection from Tacoma, Washington, Swerve Strickland, with his Mogul affiliates. guys up against AR Fox. I want to make a few comments here. First off, this AR Fox, he is pretty impressive. He does look like a video game cheat code. I get a little numb to everybody's all elite and everybody's coming in and everybody has a certain kind of crazy acrobatic style. But I do have to say, AR Fox, something about him, I do lift my head a little higher to watch when he's out there. He has made a pretty good impression on me. Just want to put that out there.
Fair.
So Strickland and AR Fox, and they're certainly showing off their agility to each other. At one point, the first outside guy that gets involved is the guy they haven't given us a name yet. We know Parker Boudreaux. We know that, again, hardcore fans know that he was in the NXT system. He's now there. He has a name. They're going with that. The other guy who's tattooed, covered on the face, purple ponytail, they have not given a name. And commentary is kind of poking fun almost at this as he gets involved a little bit. Taz is calling him Paint Man Jones. I think either Tony or Excalibur call him the tattooed henchman. And I couldn't help but think and also tweak this, that I get having a shroud of mystery around a new talent. Who is that guy? Who is that girl? It was Key with China. Who is this? Coming up. I get the shroud of mystery. Mystery's okay, but when you're like referring to somebody as like a tattooed henchman, considering that AEW's audience is a smarter audience that kind of can like see through when somebody's being positioned as somebody that matters or somebody that might just be a throwaway, tattooed henchman just doesn't seem like it rolls off the main event tongue.
No, it does not. Absolutely not. And again, as someone who likes that, when telling a story, you're taking your time to tell this story and to move on further. Again, there is a point here where you have to say, okay, let's give this guy at least a name, so that we can go from there. And, obviously commentary usually helps in that regard by putting these guys over. But when commentary is kind of poking fun at it, it kind of makes you, it doesn't make you go, wow, I wonder who that guy is. And it makes you more like, hey, even commentaries, kind of getting disinterested and just having fun with this.
Yeah, and considering the debut segment of these mogul affiliate guys with Swerve was with Rick Ross was heavily criticized by us, by just in social in general. I think it kind of flopped in a lot of people's respects a few weeks ago. So you already have a little bit of work, a little bit of ground to get you need to gain back. And considering that AEW, again, one of the things is like how many guys they sign so quickly and how packed these shows are. Your 20 pounds and the 10-pound analogy, not even taking the moment to give this guy a name. It does give off the perception of we haven't even got to that.
Yeah.
We haven't even got around to deciding what we're going to call the guy.
Yeah. That's not important right now. We'll figure it out down the road. Yeah. You're right. That is how it feels, and it shouldn't be like that.
Nonetheless, the other bit of interference does come from Parker Boudreaux. Fox and Strickland are up on the top rope. Looks like Boudreaux slips some kind of foreign object to Strickland, and that helps him regain control of the situation. Control of the situation leads him to deliver a Death Valley driver onto the apron, which looks brutal. And then at that point, commentary is even saying, just pin him. You don't have to do anything else. Right. But Swerve goes up to the top rope, still hits his double stomp finish, and gets the win here. So Swerve getting the win as he should, as establishing this new persona and stable. What was your thoughts on the match and the style overall in the finish?
No, I thought the match was actually pretty good. It was entertaining. These guys worked hard, but like you said, after a devastating move like that, I actually, in a sense, don't have a problem him hitting his finish afterwards, because it kind of, this is how I end my matches. I don't care what I've done prior to that, but the double stomp is what I do, and you're gonna eat it, that kind of thing. So I was kind of okay with it, despite the fact that Death Valley driver on the apron was absolutely, oh my goodness, it made me cringe.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, psychology-wise, that does make sense. Establish your finisher no matter what, even if it looks like they're dead, and especially if you're a heel, insult to injury, hit the finisher. Daniel Price says something interesting here. Daniel says someone's gonna get paralyzed if AEW doesn't chill out with all the apron bumps. Daniel, I can understand you saying that, because I cringed when I saw that. I will something that's I don't think it's a secret. AEW's ring is actually a custom, slightly modified ring, to where the apron is a little bit wider than it is in any other ring, in a WWE ring, or in pretty much anywhere else you would go for your standard, square ring. So the apron, that's on purpose. They did have the apron to be a little bit more room to give a little bit more of a spot for the back bumps to hit, but that doesn't take away. It's still a pretty narrow margin for error.
Yeah, there's still no give.
Yeah, it's still pretty painful.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting, and that's been since they debuted. That they purposely, when AEW started Dynamite, they had the purpose of giving that ability for guys to do more bumps on the apron by trying to do that. So, saw that comment. A little interesting fact there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we get the Gunns. Colton and Austin come out, and they come out to their music, and they quickly want their music to stop, and then all of a sudden hit the funeral music. We are going to have a funeral for FTR. It's FTR RIP. Both of them delivering a little eulogy, talking about how in 10, the FTR's put together a legacy of 10 years, and in 10 minutes, the Gunns destroyed all that. Of course, referencing to beating them a few weeks back. And then they kind of fool us with the FTR music hitting. They get all scared. It was all just a big troll job to the audience. FTR is not there. FTR was at Wrestle Kingdom 17. They did lose and drop their titles there. Jimmy, in the eulogy, they're obviously, the Gunns are putting themselves over, for stopping the almighty FTR. Even makes a comment about, you start a podcast that nobody listens to. Dax Harwood has started a podcast, which, as all podcasts do, has not everybody agrees with some of the things he's saying. Take the temperature on this. What was this segment about? Have we seen the last of FTR and AEW? Was this to help try to transfer some heat and some credibility and momentum behind the Gunns, or are we buying time for another match between the Gunns and FTR and AEW? What do you feel here?
Well, I kind of feel that there is going to be another match, and if FTR is in fact moving on from AEW, they have to. I think there needs to be at least another match with the Gunns. The Gunns were very entertaining tonight and they had that old school Attitude Era feel about them with their in-ring promo seg there with the photos of FTR and all that stuff and trolling the audience with the FTR music and stuff like that. But I almost feel like there needs to be some kind of closure. If FTR moves on now without them coming back to AEW to close their run there out in that manner, then I think they're missing an opportunity, at least anyways. The AEW is missing an opportunity.
Sure. And I think that FTR, one of them, has said that the contracts run out in April. So, the next pay-per-view is in March 5th. So, I mean, in theory, there's certainly time if AEW wants to capitalize and get more matches out of them to set up the future.
Yeah,
that could be done. So that'll be something certainly to watch and keep an eye on. We get Jade Cargill and Red Velvet up against Kiera Hogan and Sky Blue.
In the usual spot for the women.
Yes, and the train's never late.
Yep.
But actually, real quick to that point, I guess I'll cue up this comment, the super chat here. Terry Allen Jr. saying, "I hope the women gain higher focus and he liked the show." He kind of dropped that comment in back when we were talking about the prospect of the woman formerly known as Sasha Banks joining the roster. So again, we'll have to see. Does a acquisition like that, does that get the women put more prominently?
You would hope so. Because there's a named talent who has actually made, like you said, making some waves right now and getting some eyes on her. So it's one you could take advantage of, especially yes, I get that you're only 2 hours on a Wednesday night, and you got Rampage and the other stuff is mostly online stuff. But at the same time, if you're going to feature your women, give them some prime real estate at times. You tried it one week and you had the main event and everybody went, "Ooh," and took notice. And then after that, you're back to the same old schedule.
Yeah. So Jade Cargill and Red Velvet on the team here. And then commentators making mention how, Jade has had some problems with the baddies. Obviously, Kiera Hogan at one point. And we're going to see Red Velvet's going to drop off the apron and back out and kind of leave Jade to dry. Jade still, of course, is going to get the win. She moves to 47-0. But Jade Cargill, no longer insulated with henchwomen. She kind of is standing somewhat on her own to an extent. 47-0. I mean, that again, where this goes, I don't know, because there is the roster is continuing to add depth with, you know, Britt's been there, and then you add Saraya, you add Tony Storm, again, maybe a Mercedes Moné, certainly a stellar lineup of potential opponents for Jade Cargill, who's getting a very consistent long-term push.
No, absolutely. And whoever gets that first victory against Jade Cargill is going to be a big deal. The question is, do you bring someone in like a Mercedes Moné or somebody like that? And then if it's someone who comes from another organization who is the one who ends that streak, are the fans going to say, wow, well, it should have been somebody homegrown? And you'd think there is an argument to be made that, you know, is somebody really AEW homegrown? But you know what I mean by homegrown. It's not someone that they signed from the other big company to come in. So who benefits most from it and who gets elevated most from it is going to be the question. It's just right now, it's a big question mark as who can be that person to or that woman to finally defeat Jade Cargill and you know, get that elevated status.
Yeah, you mentioned the homegrown, and I'll use it as a tease. I want to get back to that in just a second. There's a very interesting status situation right now with AEW and their homegrown talent, which we'll get to after we get to this next match, which is the main event. Seattle's own Darby Allin skateboarding his way to the ring against TNT champion Samoa Joe. This one has the hot start outside. Joe grabs a hold of, I believe it was the son of the late trainer of Darby Allin, who's sitting ringside. So that makes it personal already. Darby and Joe go at it. Darby's taking the skateboard out, and they go to the staging area. Darby brings out an extra large ladder, jumps off of that, as he's known to do. Finally, we get into the ring. Bell rings. Back and forth. Joe looks like he has Darby down. Looks like he has Darby in submission mode. But Darby hulks it up, comes back to life, hits 2 coffin drops, and wins. Darby Allin is, for the second time, your TNT champion. Jimmy, did you have this one down in your predictions?
I had an idea that Darby would possibly win this match, but not in the manner he did. He got the living crap kicked out of him. That slam he took on the stairs scared me, and he took some nasty, nasty bumps here. And there was a point there, like you said, where Joe had him, and he looked like he was out, and he was literally hulking up, you know. And I think it's okay in a situation like this. You know, the guy last week what happened to Wardlow? Why couldn't a Wardlow be a guy to help cost Joe the title? Yes, I get it. Darby Allin's the baby face and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, here's a guy like Wardlow who couldn't get the job done against Samoa Joe. And here's a guy literally half his size, looking like he's a world beater. You know what I mean? And it's not the fact that, it's not the size issue that's the main thing. It's the believability factor. You know, I get it. There's supposed to be a suspension of disbelief when watching this on television, but at the same time, we talked about realism earlier with the Jarrett and the Acclaimed stuff and all like that. Let's at least try to put some realism into this. Sting was there. Why couldn't Sting be the one to help cost Joe the title? Something, anything. It just, to me, it makes now, if you think about what happened with Wardlow in the past, it does more damage to Wardlow thinking he couldn't beat Joe, but the guy, the little guy with the skateboard could. You know, that's
yeah. I said it 2 weeks ago on our last show when Wardlow got another chance to get retribution on Joe, and they made him lose the way they did, and that kind of stuff is usually done on purpose. That kind of stuff usually is done for we think or know we will be using or will be able to be using Wardlow or not. I don't know that. We'll let time play that one out, but
right.
Darby's your champion. You know, it's interesting. AEW really felt like they started getting away from what made them cool to start out. You know, they fortune fell in their favor through 2020 and 2021 that WWE released so many talents and AEW acquired so many. And, we had Punk and we had Moxley and Bryan and Adam Cole and and the list goes on. Ruby Soho and whatever. And it kind of, if you look at where we stand tonight after January 4th's episode of Dynamite to kick off 2023, and they got a big one coming up next week. Take a look at the AEW situation, Jimmy. Their world champion, MJF. Their TNT champion, Darby. Their tag team champions, the Acclaimed. Their women's champion, Jamie Hayter. Their TBS champion, Jade Cargill. All their homegrown stars.
Right.
No Moxley, no Punk, not even Bryan. As it's not a Tony Storm or Ruby Soho or even a Saraya. It is a really interesting situation that it feels like AEW is kind of getting back to some roots. I know they're only a couple years old, but that's what it feels like. They are kind of getting back to investing in who they have and who they've built up. I don't know. I something interesting as I was writing down as we were wrapping up Dynamite tonight.
No, and I'm fine with that. That's not the issue. The issue is how it's done. Do you know what I mean? It just at least give me a sense where I could buy into what's going on. And I know I've been challenged before with other talents that are not as big. Everybody says Wardlow is that tailor-made guy for WWE. There's a guy that can go to WWE and become a star because he fits into that mold. But and there are smaller guys. Look, Rey Mysterio is the perfect example of smaller guys that can get over huge. Eddie Guerrero, guys like that, the late great Eddie Guerrero. It's not the size, it is the believability factor. And in the way he won tonight, I just didn't buy it after the beating he took. And that's the issue I had with it. And as far as the homegrown talent, I like the idea of the quote unquote homegrown talent being the champions, but do it in a way that for me draws me in as opposed to make me go, oh, come on.
Yeah, that's that's where we're at, and again, going back to homegrown, you could have Wardlow remain as your TNT champion, but where that ship is going, we shall see. Stay tuned, folks. But yeah, so certainly stage is set for the forum next week in LA. A lot will be going into that one. I'm sure a lot's gonna be coming out of it, so that's gonna make for an exciting podcast next Wednesday. So make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube or Apple Spotify or Apple iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you don't miss next Wednesday with Jimmy, myself, and hopefully Issa. And then, of course, again, on Monday nights, Triple J, myself, Jimmy, and Jack getting back together next Monday as we got Raw. It's coming close to this 30-year anniversary of Raw, coming close to Royal Rumble. A lot of stuff to talk about. Just a exciting time right now to be a pro wrestling fan and to be talking about it. And we're here for you 7 days a week on Wrestling Inc. Jimmy, any final thoughts, final plugs about what went down tonight on Dynamite or anything else in the wrestling world that maybe we didn't touch on?
No, I just there's some good stuff that goes on. It's just it's talked about all the time. It's the little things, the screws that need to be tightened with AEW. The problem is there's too many screws that need to be tightened. Just when you think they're heading in the right direction, that something like. Again, the finish to the main event just didn't sit well with me. I'm watching a good match and then something happens at the end of the match. It doesn't sit well with me, or something, for example, at the end of the Jericho match, all the aftermath, it almost feels like almost every match has to have a little bit of aftermath, if you know what I mean. But, and as far as the wrestling world goes, I'm really enjoying the Bloodline stuff right now. It's just resonating big time with me. But if there's something that isn't resonating with me, I mentioned it today in my Ref and Rant, which you can catch every day on all my social media platforms from Monday to Friday. Dexter Lumis right now is not resonating. There's something about that character. And I know people go, well, if you go back to what he did in NXT and stuff like that. But the problem is, NXT had half the audience that Raw has. So a lot of your audience hadn't seen that persona. Will it work with them? Who knows? But right now, there's something not clicking with Dexter Lumis.
I'm sure we'll talk more about Dexter next Monday for Raw. Big shout out to Ricky saying thank you, Jimmy, or Justin and Jimmy. Thank you. Dark Money Zone. Great podcast tonight. Thank you for this. No problem. Thanks for tuning in live. We appreciate all of you, no matter where you might be.
Also,
and Armando. Armand, I did not mention Orange Cassidy as a champ. Yes, as the All In champ. Orange Cassidy is that
Right.
title as well.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, and also wanted to mention, because you mentioned her, Issa, hope you're feeling better. Miss you.
Absolutely. I hope she feels better, but I can only have so much sympathy when she's in the warm Puerto Rican weather and we're
Good
slogging through wet winter.
Good point.
She's got her vitamin C to get her better.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Again, appreciate all the nice comments. Again, if you're checking this podcast out, whenever, please tweet at Justin LaBar, at Jimmy Korderas. Let us know where in the world you are in the world checking this out. What are you doing? Are you on the commute to work? Are you in the office? Are you ignoring the teacher? Are you procrastinating chores at home? What is it? We love to know how we're moving along in your day. Much appreciated all the support. Thank you, Jimmy. Going to see you again on Monday. Got a lot of stuff to talk about coming up here. Wrestling Inc. 7 days a week. Check out Wrestling Inc. Make sure it's bookmarked. Make sure you have the notifications pushing to your device. Constant news being updated. You don't want to miss out on it. Until Monday, we'll see y'all. Good night. Be safe.